Today, we're going to talk about another training aid strategy, which is the pull buoy. And the purpose of using the pull buoy is to improve propulsion from the upper body as opposed to just conditioning the arms. So, really, we're using the pull buoy to emphasize and enhance skill development of the upper body. The upper body influence on speed. And so, speed is driven by the arms in all the strokes. The only one where it's not quite as important is probably breaststroke, and that's more because of the importance of the legs. But in all the other strokes, for sure, and even in breaststroke, the arms play a major role. So with no arms, there's no speed. And so swimmers have to be able to create a lot of force with the upper body throughout the duration of the race. It's not enough to create force in the beginning, you have to create it throughout the whole race. And not only do they have to create a lot of force, they have to be able to effectively apply force. And that's the skill component that we need to address. And many swimmers struggle with either creating enough force or learning how to apply that force effectively, either at all or at high intensity for long periods of time. So the challenge of developing these skills. So the first is that it's really difficult to do so. And that's for several different reasons. The first is that it's a nuanced skill. There's a lot of detail to it. It's not particularly simple, and trying to explain each and every nuance is tough to do. Secondly, the specific application of the skill is going to depend on the specific swimmer. Each swimmer is going to have different lengths of their bones, both in the arm and the hand. They're going to have different levels of strength, and they're going to have different levels of mobility through all the joints of the upper body. And that's going to affect how they can pull. And it's hard to know how those different characteristics directly influence what they should do. Another important aspect is that there's a lot of athletes, and there's typically only one coach or two coaches. And the coach to athlete ratio is often really small. And so that becomes a challenge because it's hard to actually instruct athletes. And as a result, attention is an issue, both in terms of the attention that coaches can give athletes, but also in the ability to keep athletes' attention directed on the appropriate skills. It's really difficult to expect them to focus on the angle of their elbow for 60 minutes at a time. And stroke counts are a great way to emphasize longer, more effective swimming. However, swimmers can cheat stroke counts. And by cheat, I mean that they can either use the legs or the walls to hit the designated stroke counts. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because those can be effective strategies for swimming fast. However, it's going to take the emphasis away from the arms if that's the goal. So what do? Add a pull buoy. When you do so, it forces swimmers to solve those training tasks, whatever they are, with the arms. They can't use the legs. It's much more difficult to use the walls. They have to use the arms to get the job done. It's an added constraint that takes the legs. They're constrained from using the legs as an option to solve the problems that you put in front of them. And so as a result, any performance that you ask for or any technical change that you ask for, or either that just kind of happened based upon the set that's created, now those solutions must come from the arms instead of the arms and the legs or just the legs. And if the goal is to improve upper body force application, that's exactly what you want. Adding a buoy is traditionally thought of a way to physically overload the arms, but it's also a strategy for technically overloading the arms because you're asking swimmers to solve technical problems with the arms and they don't have the option to use other strategies. And as a result, if you're trying to improve upper body force application, adding a buoy can make other tasks a lot more effective because the solutions are now narrowed and they have to use upper body strategies to effectively accomplish the task goals. Just using a buoy can be an effective strategy. However, it's not going to be a super effective one. In order to get the results that you really want, you're going to have to use other strategies in combination with the buoy. So what are some of those strategies? Well, you can alternate between swim and pull. And so then athletes have to figure out what they're doing with just the arms, and then they have to learn how to integrate the legs because that is a skill in and of itself. The arms and the legs don't act independently, they have to work together. And so you can isolate one to improve it, but you also have to learn to integrate it. You can change stroke count requirements, and so that's going to force swimmers to reorganize their stroke, and they have to do that with the arms only because you're using a pull buoy. You can also add stroke rate requirements, which is going to have the same effect as the stroke count requirements. It's just going to be done from a different perspective. You can add resistance, and so now swimmers have to overcome resistance with their upper body, again, probably going to improve force application. You can change the hands they use so that you can use closed fists, you can use horns, you can use no case sign, you can hold paddles, you can wear paddles, you can pinch paddles. Any of those strategies is going to affect how swimmers apply force to the water. And because you're using a buoy, they're going to have to use those strategies and just focus on the arms to create whatever other tasks they need to accomplish. And then lastly, you can add different speed requirements, which is going to change and affect everything as well. And so all of these different strategies can be used separately with a pull buoy, or they can be used in combination and in various combinations to really affect how swimmers are going to use their arms to create propulsion in the water. Here are two very simple sets that use a pull buoy to isolate the arms and focus on both skill and fitness of the upper body. So this is a very basic setup to illustrate the concepts. You can go into way more detail and use all the strategies we talked about previously in order to get even more out of the first set's all with a buoy, and they have to negative split at the same stroke count. They have to take fewer strokes each 50. They have to descend at the same stroke count, and they have to take as few strokes as possible. And because they're doing that with a buoy, they're going to have to really change how their arms are interacting with the water to accomplish all of those different tasks. And that first set is a pretty aerobic set, and it can be done in 8 million different ways, and you can use those other strategies to make it even more effective. The second set below is more of a speed-based one. It's the same basic concept, it's just over shorter distances and faster speeds. So they need to descend at the same stroke count, and then they're going to add strokes so that they go even faster. They're going to take as few strokes as possible and then go as fast as possible, alternating. And they're also going to go as fast as possible at the same stroke count. Again, these are different technical problems that athletes have to solve. And because they're using a pull buoy, it changes the set dramatically from one where they have multiple options in order to solve the problem into one where they really only have one option, which is being a lot more effective with how they apply force with the upper body. And when the goal is to improve propulsion with the upper body, that's exactly what you want to do. I hope that helps reframe why you might want to use a pull buoy into one that's, instead of just developing the arms from a physical standpoint, it can be really effective for developing the arms from a technical standpoint. You can do pretty much anything and everything you want with a pull buoy. It's only limited by your creativity and what you're trying to accomplish.